Hello, my name is Chi Din, and I'm with Avignon Realty Coaching and Training. And today I will be going over the promulgated by the Texas Real Estate Commission TREC Seller's Temporary Residential Lease. Here's a notice here for use only when seller occupies the property for no more than 90 days after the closing. Starting with paragraph number 1, this is parties. Parties to this lease are landlord and tenant. Their name will go here on these lines. Paragraph 2, lease. Landlord leases to tenant the property described in the contract between landlord as buyer and tenant as seller, known as. The address of the property will go on these lines. Paragraph 3, term. The term of this lease commences on the date the cell cover by the contract is closed and funded and terminates on this date here unless terminated earlier by reason of other provisions. Paragraph 4, tenant shall pay to landlord as rental this amount per day, excluding the day of closing and funding, with the full amount of rental for the term of the lease to be paid at the time of funding of the sale, and tenant will not be entitled to a refund of rental if this lease terminates early due to tenant's default or voluntary surrender of the property. Paragraph 5, deposit. Tenant shall pay to landlord at the time of funding of the sale this amount as a deposit to secure performance of this lease by tenant. Landlord may use the deposit to satisfy tenant's obligations under this lease, and landlord shall refund any unused portion of the deposit to tenant with an itemized list of all deductions from the deposit within 30 days after tenant surrenders possession of the property and provides landlord written notice of tenant's forwarding address. Paragraph 6, utilities. Tenant shall pay all utility charges except there's anything that tenant is not responsible for that will go here under exception, which landlord shall pay. Paragraph 7, use of property. Tenant may use the property only for residential purposes, and tenant may not assign this lease or sublet any part of the property. Paragraph 8, pets. Tenant may not keep pets on the property except if there's any exception that will go right here on this line. Paragraph 9, condition of property. Tenant accepts the property in its present condition and state of repair at the commencement of the lease. Upon termination, tenant shall surrender the property to landlord and the condition required under the contract, except normal wear and tear and any casualty loss. Paragraph 10, alterations. Tenant may not alter the property or install improvements or fixtures without the prior written consent of the landlord, and any improvements or fixture placed on the property during the lease become the property of landlord. Special provisions. What would go here is that if there's anything that's not covered in this form, then factual statement will go under special provisions. Paragraph 12, inspections. Landlord may enter at reasonable time to inspect the property. Tenant shall provide landlord door keys and access codes to allow access to the property during the term of the lease. Paragraph 13, laws. Tenant shall comply with all applicable laws, restrictions, ordinances, rules, and regulations with respect to the property. Paragraph 14, repairs and maintenance, except as otherwise provided in this lease, tenant shall bear all expense of repairing and maintaining the property, including but not limited to the yard, trees, and shrubs, unless otherwise required by the Texas Property Code. And tenants shall promptly repair at tenant's expense any damage to the property caused directly or indirectly by any act or omission of the tenant or any person other than the landlord, landlord's agents, or invitees. Wherever there's a need for initials for identification by landlord and tenant, the initial will go right here in these lines. And here, seller's temporary residential lease, the property address needs to be filled out up here. Paragraph 15, indemnity. Tenant indemnifies landlord from the claims of all third parties for injury or damage to the person or property of such third party arising from the use or occupancy of the property by tenant. And this indemnification includes attorney's fees, costs, and expenses incurred by landlord. Insurance. Paragraph 16. Landlord and tenant shall each maintain such insurance on the contents and property as each party may deem appropriate during the term of this lease. Note, consult your insurance agent. Possession of the property by seller as tenant may change insurance policy coverage. Paragraph 17, default. If tenant fails to perform or observe any provision of this lease and fails within 24 hours after notice by landlord to commence and diligently pursue to remedy such failure, and tenant will be in default. Paragraph 18, termination. This lease terminates upon expiration of the term specified in paragraph 3 and upon tenant's default under this lease. Paragraph 19, holding over. Tenant shall surrender possession of the property upon termination of this lease. And any possession by tenant after termination creates a tenancy of sufferance and will not operate to renew or extend this lease. And tenant shall pay this amount per day during the period of any possession after termination as damages, in addition to any other remedies to which landlord is entitled. Paragraph 20, attorney's fees. The prevailing party in any legal proceeding brought under or with respect to this lease is entitled to recover from the non-prevailing party all costs of such proceeding and reasonable attorney fees. 21, smoke alarms. The Texas Property Code requires landlord to install smoke alarms in certain locations within the property at landlord's expense. And tenant expressly waives landlord's duty to inspect and repair smoke alarms. Paragraph 22, security devices. The requirements of the Texas Property Code relating to security devices do not apply to a residential lease for a term of 90 days or less. Paragraph 23, consult your attorney. Real estate licensee cannot give legal advice. This lease is intended to be legally binding. Read it carefully. If you do not understand the effect of this lease, consult your attorney before signing. Then there's notices. All notices from one party to the other must be in writing and are effective when mailed to, hand delivered at, or transmitted by facsimile or electronic transmission as follows. Landlord information will go here, tenant information will go here, and landlord tenant signature. And that is the seller's temporary residential lease. If you have any questions, please go to your mentor or broker to get any questions resolved for yourself. And thank you.